All right, so in this video, I want to go over the shooting of Alex Pretti in Minneapolis over this past weekend. And I have a couple motivations for doing this. One, I've already done a couple videos about what's been going on in the state of Minnesota, the Renee Good incident, also Don Lemon and the protesters who went to the church in St. Paul and disrupted it. But this story of Alex Pretti, this one is interesting to me because there's so many what I would think of as teachable moments. There's so many kind of lessons about media that we can extract from it. But also what's happening there in Minnesota, I think is hugely important because it's become a it's become an ignition point for a lot of violence and contention, and it has the feel very much of the beginnings of a 2020 summer riot situation. I think in some ways we're lucky. It's unfortunate these things are happening, but we're lucky that they're happening in the middle of winter in Minnesota versus them happening at the beginning of summer. When I think protests, there'd be a lot more people that would be attracted to come out and engage in more activity um, if the weather was more conducive to that. But there's several things about this shooting that put it in a gray zone of good or bad shoot, and that's the type of incident that agitators and malign influencers on the left and the right really love because they can kind of inject a polarizing view onto it, and they can use it as a way to further polarize people to the extremes, make things more contentious, and then get people to go along with their cause or to just check out altogether from engaging in the information war and participating. So if you're not with us, you're against us, or you're off on the sideline is kind of the thinking there. And what's manifesting, what's coming about in Minnesota has all the markings of in some ways, very sophisticated operation, decentralized down to some not so sophisticated individuals who are participating in the front lines of it. And there's just so much that goes into this situation. It's not as simple as most media would like to present it as. And the point of this video isn't so much to convince you of one thing or the other, but rather to find some sort of understanding that is more nuanced and more educated on all of the various factors that are going into the death of this man. So obviously, since we're going to be getting into an incident that resulted in the shooting death of a person, it's going to be not a graphic video, but it is going to be somewhat disturbing. So fair warning about that. We're also going to be looking at a lot of video here at the beginning of this cell phone video that was captured of the incident, and there is a lot of noise disturbance happening, a lot of whistling and yelling, car noises. So it's not going to be the most enjoyable thing to listen to, but it is important to listen to it because we need to hear the gunshots for at least some part of our analysis. But fair warning to you that it's going to be very annoying to hear all these whistles, and I'm going to talk more about that because that's part of the whistles are there for two reasons: to annoy and aggravate people, and then also as a form of communication between the protesters. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. First, I want to talk about Alex Pretti. So, reportedly, he was a nurse in Minneapolis in an ICU, and he was an outdoorsman, and he was also someone who had been convinced of the narratives that are very anti-ICE, that ICE is just randomly going around and kidnapping people, that ICE is violating American civil rights, that they're kidnapping children, all of the sorts of leftist media, leftist organization talking points that we've been hearing about that don't really have anything to back them up. It's unfortunate that it's become popularized, but we've seen it so many times before that things tend to catch a momentum about them. Allegations do, and sensationalized allegations tend to be way more shareable and get much more attention than things that actually have some evidence to back them up, right? And we also live in an age, part of this information war. The reason it's a war is because information is constantly at battle with misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. So it takes a great deal of effort to actually find out what is going on, what's true, what's not true. And it's so easy to be influenced by things that are not true, are partially true, or out of context. And we've seen that happen with all sorts of things that relate to racial tensions and that relate to immigration. There's a short clip I want you to listen to here. It's an interview with Alex Pretti's father. I find it worth listening to because it describes a bit about the person, Alex Pretti, where he was and what his thinking was and what some of his influences were.
I can't get any information from anybody. The police, they call Border Patrol. Border Patrol's closed. The hospitals won't answer any questions. He thought it was terrible. He cared about people deeply, and he was very upset with what was happening in Minneapolis and throughout the United States with ICE, as millions of other people are upset. You know, kidnapping children, just grabbing people off the street. He cared about those people, and he knew it was wrong. So he did participate in protests. We had this discussion with him 2 weeks ago or so, that go ahead and protest, but do not engage, do not do anything stupid, basically.
He wouldn't.
And he said he knows that. He knew that.
He hated that, people were just trashing the land. And he was an outdoorsman. He took his dog everywhere he went. He loved this country.
Okay, so this person has been convinced of some things that aren't entirely accurate, and he has been motivated, he's been activated by them, and decided to engage in forms of protest that were specifically meant to interfere with law enforcement. Hey, this is Just Editing Human breaking in here, probably not for the first time during this video. I want to point out something else about Alex Pretti that we don't know 100%, but seems highly likely that he was part of one of these signal groups, if not one or more. And it's some people think they have identified his account, and that account was coordinating going to the exact area where the shooting incident took place, right there on screen. And there were messages shared by someone calling himself Alvin Q, and Alex Pretti has been, I don't want to say credibly linked, but there are some things that point to him being that account. And the Oversight Project, which is a decent follow, I'm going to give you this short breakdown here. It says, to summarize what I got in this post, Pretti previously used the alias Alvin Q Pretti on an X account. Alvin Q in this signal chat says he's near the location of the shooting about 15 minutes before the incident, and he is texting about ICE movements, which aligns with what the activity Pretti was engaged in. And Alvin Q's emoji indicates a medical role and does not text again after the shooting occurred. So I'm not saying this is 100%, but there is good reason to suspect that Pretti, that's his account in the signal chat. And we know for a fact that the area the signal chat was talking about is where Alex Pretti went, and there's good reason to believe that this X account was associated with Alex, and it was called Alvin Q. So, just one more thing about him, and we're gonna learn more about this guy. I mean, it's very early days, so as this moves forward, we're gonna learn more and more about him, and I almost feel like, I moved too soon to make this video. I know you guys are only 7 minutes into it, but there's some things we can go ahead and discern. And part of my goal with the video is to set people up with an eye towards understanding the entire context of the situation, as well as the granular pieces of it. So, all right, back to the video. DHS put out a post about 3 hours after the incident that resulted in his death, and we're gonna go over this in a minute, but I want to highlight that DHS was very quick on social media to put out a statement saying they encountered someone that, well, at 9:05 a.m., DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien wanted for violent assault. This was not a random encounter. This was not DHS patrolling looking for just random people to pick up. It was a targeted operation against an individual who they had a warrant for. As all ICE and DHS operations are, they're not random, they're not patrolling cities just looking for anybody who looks like an immigrant. They have specific information, they have judicial warrants or administrative warrants. It's somebody who has been given due process. There's lots of allegations that there's no due process for these individuals. There is. And DHS and ICE are going to places where they have information a specific individual is going to be, and they have a specific warrant for that person to be taken into custody and be further processed. So that's why DHS was there. That's why ICE was there. That's why Border Patrol is there. There's a little bit more to that too about why it's those organizations and not other law enforcement. It was during their operation that they were confronted by an individual, the Border Patrol officers were. And that individual was Alex Pretti, or Pretti. Pretti was there as part of a group that was doing direct action. They're not there to just hold a sign and chant or let their, tell the officers how much they don't like what they're doing. They're there to actively interfere with law enforcement's ability to conduct the operation. That is 100% interference with a federal law enforcement officer, and you can be arrested for that and charged with a felony. The statute that might be used against you, or the U.S. Code, is 18 U.S.C. 111, which is assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers or employees. And it covers forcible assaults, resistance, anybody who opposes or impedes or intimidates or interferes with any person designated with Section 1114 of this title while engaged in or on account of performance of official duties. And that's what they're doing. They're specifically organizing training to interfere with Border Patrol, ICE, DHS, and other law enforcement agencies in the performance of their official duties. In this instance, it was going after a person, an illegal alien, wanted for violent assault. So that's who they're protecting, is a violent individual who is wanted. There's a warrant for his arrest. And this code, this law, could have been applied to any of them. They could have been arrested and charged with that, and I would like to see more of that happening. Okay, now we're going to go into the videos of this, and I'm going to remind everybody about it, that I'm going to give you a noise warning because it's going to be noisy, and we're going to watch a lot of these videos so we get as many angles as possible of this incident. And the purpose of this is to just gain a better understanding of what happened than you would otherwise get from just glancing at a news headline or seeing a 10-second clip on social media, okay? But fair warning about the noise. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, I appreciate it, or anywhere that you're watching this, but particularly if you're watching on YouTube, this is the type of topic that gets suppressed in the YouTube algorithm. So it would really help me if you like the video, comment on it, whatever your comment is. Liking and commenting on it will help the video go further, but the material that we're covering here is going to mean that YouTube is they're not going to like this video very much. It's not going to be treated well over there. And I don't mean by the audience, I mean by the platform. There's no blood, there's no gore, nothing like that. But what is happening is for sure disturbing. So, all right, you've been warned. Okay, I'm going to start off. I'm going to be trying careful not blow your ears out, and we'll amp up volume later on. I want to start with this encounter. As we go through these videos, I kind of want to go through it without I want to minimize my comments and we'll just watch the videos, and then we'll go back through them and go into more details of what is happening and try and break them down a bit. But as I go through them, I'm drawing from a bunch of different sources for the videos, and I don't want anybody to conclude that I support or do not support or agree with any comments or overlays that are in the videos. The only or the accounts that they come from. The only reason I'm choosing these videos is because of all the ones I've found, these seem to be the highest quality and show all the angles that I want to show. But they also have their own commentary on them, and either overlaid on the top or in the social media post. And I just don't want you to be distracted by those things. One, I also don't want you to think that I'm promoting whatever it says on the screen or whatever that account is saying. I'm not. I'm going to, in fact, I think in all of them, I'm going to ignore what they say. I just want the video so that we can get as clear a view of the incident. And again, we're going to watch this first, and then we're going to watch several of these, and then I will give my comments on them afterward.
Yeah, unroll your windows. No, you're just right inside.
That's just FYI. This is Pretti right here. So he has black boots on, it would appear. He has light brown pants, darker brown coat, light brown gloves, and a black hat. Okay. So that's Pretti right there.
Let's go around.
Let's go to this next video. And it's going to show a different angle, actually an angle from the opposite direction.
Newest video where
Let me back up just a bit. Okay, next one. And let me get this on screen as best I can. So this is unmuted. Okay. Next one. This shows kind of 9 degrees of that last video.
Oh shit! What the fuck?
All right. Now this one kind of collects them all, 3 of the videos together, side by side.
Tonight, new videos raising questions of what exactly happened in.
I'm going to turn the commentary off. And go back to that view of the 3 side by side. Here we go. This one actually has 5. It didn't look like they were perfectly synced up though. I did like seeing them side by side though. Yeah, they're not well synced right there. Okay. Here's another one. this is from someone who's known as the Pink Lady or the Lady with the Pink or Woman in Pink. But you'll see her in some of the videos that she has pink on, and she was taking cell phone video. This is a longer video, and it's one of the most useful ones that I have. Let me, there we go. It's also one with some of the strongest whistle noise, so I'm sorry about that. I'm keeping the volume on it because it's important to hear when the shots are, and then also to help put yourself in the context of the situation with those whistles, because they're part of the situation, intentionally so. They are a factor in this environment, and they're brought for the reason of communicating, one, two, keeping the officers on high alert and impeding their communication. That's Alex Pretti right there. He is also recording. I haven't seen that his cell phone video has been uploaded anywhere, but of course that's going to be very important. His boots might actually be dark brown and not black. I said earlier they were black. They might be dark brown. He's directing traffic for some reason. He's directing that car to come forward.
What the fuck is wrong with you? The fuck, people? The fuck is wrong with you? Honestly.
Okay. This might be the last one that we watch before I go through and comment on it. Start breaking it down. This is from a different angle. This is a car down the street. And the value of it isn't so much as that it shows the incident, but it shows the officers responding to the call. You see a change. There he goes. All right. This one is higher quality, and we're going to take a look at this video quite a bit. All right. I want to go to this lady, the Pink Lady, and we're going to start breaking some of this down. And I'm going to keep it muted. So there's Pretti walking in the street with his camera in his right hand. He has a phone in his right hand acting as a camera. It's a black case on it, it appears. And then with his left hand, it looks like he's directing traffic for some reason. He's telling that black SUV right there to come forward. And then he directs it around him. I don't think he was directing it to park. I think he was directing it around him. In the middle of all of this, you're hearing short whistles, and then they change to long whistles. The short whistles are to alert people that ICE is in the area. The long whistles are to alert people that ICE is engaged in an altercation with protesters. And the purpose of that is so that protesters in the area will come to that location where there is an altercation and further interfere with law enforcement, pull their cameras out and video it, harass the law enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why there's a change in these videos where it switches from short whistles to long whistles, and they're literally communicating with each other. The other reason that they're using the whistles is because whistles naturally, and this has probably happened to you by watching this video, it heightens your sense of alertness. It puts you on edge. And they want to keep these officers on edge the entire time. This sort of incident is what they are trying to create. And that's the whole purpose of direct action. Not protests, not sit downs, not signage, not marches, not rallies. That's not what they're doing. They're doing direct action, which is direct interference with law enforcement in order to provoke situations that do a number of things. But probably most importantly, is it causes people to lose their support, or it causes a loss of support for law enforcement because they see videos like this and people start to question whether or not they support what law enforcement is doing. And the context of what the law enforcement was there in the first place to do, completely left out. Any antagonistic acts that preceded this, completely left out. All they need is just this short little clip of officers being rough, getting in physical contact with a protester, the protester doubling over like, oh, I'm innocent, don't hurt me, don't hurt me. The crowd chanting, what are you doing? Why are you doing that to that person? They don't deserve this. And then something going wrong, really in a really bad way, like it did here. And that becomes propaganda. That becomes that person who's victimized becomes a martyr, and then they use it to push the cause. It's the exact same playbook that we see in the Middle East and have seen in the Middle East for years and years, not decades. It's very Maoist and Marxist, and also it's how these types of operations work. And there's a template for it, and that template is manifesting right here. And they've chosen Minnesota for a very important reason I'll get to later. But I want to continue breaking down the video of this incident. So back up more. So as the pink lady gets off the street, the video person, she gets off the street, Alex is there videoing. He walks forward and there's another protester person there. And there's a Border Patrol agent who comes over, and we see in, I think this one, there's that agent, the Border Patrol agent right there. In his right hand is what looks like OC spray or pepper spray of some sort.
Yeah, unroll your windows. No, you're just spraying inside.
And see right there, he's pushing Alex off of the street. At this moment, law enforcement has now engaged with Alex Pretti directly. They're not trying to arrest him, but they're pushing him out of the street because the protesters, I shouldn't even call them protesters, but I don't really know, these agents of chaos, whatever you want to think of them as, are interfering with traffic on purpose. They're looking for vehicles that have ICE or Border Patrol agents in them, and they want to block those vehicles. So they're not just directing, it's not that they're in traffic trying to like help, although it can appear that way in a short clip, and they'll take advantage of that. What they're doing is they're specifically trying to identify individuals and vehicles that are associated with law enforcement so they can then target that vehicle. And see that lady, I think it's a lady, this overweight person in the green jacket with the blue whatever around her head, the blue wrap, she has a whistle in her mouth. It's part of the reason in the pink lady video the whistles are so loud, I think. This video, I'm going to turn this down. The altercation started, so the whistles start getting longer. Okay. Let me back up just a bit. That Border Patrol person then pushes that protester out of the road, and he's going for a confrontation with them to push them out of the road. Pretti then puts his left arm around her. Remember, his phone was in his right hand. Still in his right hand. You can see it right there. It's black. It's very important that he has this black object in his hand. Lady with the pink reddish mask is right there. Border Patrol agent pushes her too, pushes them out of the street. Now we can argue, there's going to be debate about whether or not this Border Patrol agent was too aggressive or should he have pushed them or whatever. There's some other de-escalation he could have engaged in. One, we don't know any of the lead up to this. We don't know how many times he's told them to get out of the street. Okay. And three, it doesn't matter. As far as understanding the Alex Pretti shooting and whether or not it was a good or bad shoot or any of that, it does not matter that this agent shoved that person or that person. What matters is what Alex Pretti is doing right now, because this is when it switches from get out of the roadway to you're under arrest. It's this exact moment that I have hit pause that it switches from get out of the way to you are under arrest. And it's because Alex Pretti is doing what? He's reaching over and pushing. He's making contact with law enforcement and trying to separate law enforcement from that individual. And that is the moment that Alex Pretti went from an individual in the area disrupting traffic, which could have been a misdemeanor ticket, right? He's basically being a nuisance in some way, maybe a misdemeanor charge somewhere. This is where he became a felon because he violated 18 USC 111. Look at the time. It's 13-second mark. Okay. And then he takes another step in between and he turns his body to confront the Border Patrol agent. His head is still looking at the woman who's now falling down. And then he looks at the Border Patrol agent, and that Border Patrol agent is like, no, you're under arrest now. Now the Border Patrol agent is engaging Alex Pretti. Now, I think, and I think it's fine to extend the benefit of the doubt to Alex Pretti, that he may have engaged in that action just intuitively, on impulse, seeing a person being shoved, not. There could have been a number of things in his head when he did that, and this could have gone a completely different direction. Even if he was charged with a felony, it might have ended up being dismissed because he might have been able to have argued that it was just a natural reaction to someone who was, being physically contacted, and that person ended up falling onto the curb right there on the ice, and they could have gotten really badly injured, which is true. And his natural reaction being right there, seeing that happen, he reached out to try and stop it. He wasn't even thinking about it. I'm not saying you should buy that, or a jury would, or a judge would. I'm just saying that that's a level of understanding I think that we can say is available to us. And I think it's possible that he did that very naturally, as many of us probably have before, right? Or at least felt the desire to, like, whoa, no need to do that. And then he gets sprayed. So now he's been sprayed with the pepper spray. The agent is going to arrest him. Grabs his left arm. Remember what's in his right hand? That black phone. Right there, he might have tried to put his phone in his front pocket, or it might just be happenstance that it went right there. But now the agent has his left arm over here, and Alex has his phone like this, and it's near his, possibly in his front jacket pocket area. His hand is still right there. Front area is right hand. We need to track his right hand. That woman, meanwhile, has turned and stood back up. I'm going to back up. I'm going to back up just a little bit because that ends up complicating things a bit. See how she's right here at the moment they get sprayed, and it appears that she's looking at them and looking at this happening. Here, let me move my video capture over here to make it a little bit easier to see this scene. Okay, so she's right there on the ground. Can you guys see my... There, you can see my mouse now. Okay. She's on the ground right there. She's looking up at their altercation. She's going to stand up. Border Patrol agent has Alex's left arm. Alex has his phone in his right hand still. This other lady is turning, and it looks like she's going to help that woman who's on the ground. The woman on the ground is now turning her back to the agent and to Alex. Alex has been sprayed in the face with pepper spray. An agent has his left hand, and the agent appears to still be spraying him a bit to get compliance because he's placing Alex under arrest. This lady stands up, and now she's looking at them again. Lady in brown, the brown coat, is holding her arm, is helping her stand up. Another Border Patrol agent has arrived on the scene. He is on Alex's right side. The woman is now braced. She's got like both feet planted on the ground, her back toward Alex and the agents, and she's got her hands out in front of her. At this moment, Alex grabs onto her for some reason. I don't know why, but at this moment right here, Alex grabs onto that lady. I want to find that one specific footage that showed from the front of that car. Where is that one? There it is. We're going to look at this, and I want to slow it down. I feel like she's looking at me disapprovingly. So agent shoves the woman in the white jacket down. Alex interferes, and at that moment, he's just committed a crime. Agent sprays him in the face, grabs his left arm. Alex turns right there. He's facing the woman on the ground. There's a woman in the brown jacket going to help the woman in the white jacket. Agent continues spraying. Now he's let go of Alex, though. I'm not sure why he let go. It's not clear to me if... I'll watch that again. Okay, he let go of him because Alex pulled his left arm away. Agent continues to spray him, but now Alex is grabbing that other woman. I don't know if it's just if he did it because he's falling down, he's got spray in his face, maybe he can't see very well right now. That would make sense, right? He also had glasses on, so that might have protected him a bit from that spray, but still, his nose is going to be running or starting, all of his sinuses are going to be flaring up from this spray. So it could be that his vision is impaired at this point. You would think it would be. But he's falling down, and in the process of doing that, he's kind of falling on top of the woman in the white jacket, and he ends up grabbing her for some reason. Maybe he's just grabbing for anything. I don't know. But he's grabbed her, and now as the agent is pulling Alex back because he's placing him under arrest, Alex has a hold of that woman. See that? And so this other agent now gets engaged. Unfortunately, during this exact moment, this person walks in front of the camera. This other agent gets engaged with him, and another agent right here has arrived. So now there's 3 agents right there. Now there's 5 agents, 6 if you count this guy on the far left has come in. But Alex still has a hold of that person. I don't know why. But I could also see how that it's complicating the whole situation that he's doing that. And it seems like he's trying to do that because he reaches down and grabs her some more and falls over. This other protester with the pink mask on and the brown jacket is reaching in to try and help that woman. That agent right here tells her to back up. See, he's putting his hand up, back away. This other agent is coming over to her, telling them, back up, get away. And now the other agents, they've pulled Alex off of that woman. Go to this one. Down. Trying to decide which one I want to use. Is this one also? Yeah. Go back to this. Yeah, Alex is bent over right there, but they've got a hold of him and they pull him off and he lets go. And then he still hasn't. No, he hasn't let go. I'm wrong. He hasn't let go yet. They're both on the ground. He kicked right there. I don't know if you guys saw that, but he kicked. See that? He kicked and it actually caused this agent to lose a step, lose his footing. See that? And so that's what causes this agent to then punch Alex. In order to get compliance, this agent's now gone to the ground with them. Alex is on all fours, facing the white vehicle, his head towards the white vehicle. He's going to end up getting spun around, though. And see, now he's crawling and he's turning around. He's not complying. He's got a half dozen law enforcement officers trying to place him under arrest, and he is not complying. He's curling up into a ball. He's trying to scoot around. They've gotten the 2 women separated from him, but he is not complying with the arrest. At this point, he's already been sprayed multiple times. He's been punched at least once, and he has multiple officers trying to get a hold of him and put cuffs on him, trying to get compliance. I believe that's his hat on the ground right there, that black object. But at this moment, something more important comes into view. That's one of his hands right there. This agent in the blue jeans and the gray jacket is who is going to disarm Alex. And this is when things go sideways. One, he has to disarm him. There's nothing wrong with that. But in disarming him, he or one of the other agents announces gun. This agent takes off with that gun and he's going to go secure it in a vehicle, which is exactly what he's supposed to do. But the other agents hear gun, and that causes a series of reactions that lead to the bad result. This video from, where do I have it? Here we go. This video is from the pink lady, but it's been stabilized. And every time I try and get this to play at a slower speed, for some reason on X, it breaks. So I can't slow it down for you. So we're going to watch it together multiple times. and we're just going to focus on certain elements of it on each playthrough, as opposed to being able to slow it down. It sucks that I can't get it to slow down, but it's I don't know why, but for some reason X does not like it when I slow this video down in particular. Maybe because it's high quality, I don't know. I shouldn't say high quality. Maybe because it's in it being stabilized, it's a higher it's a larger video file. So I don't know, but anyway, so this is from on the sidewalk facing the group. There appears to be 1, 2, 3, 4, I would say 5 agents. The woman in the brown jacket's here. The lady on the ground with the white jacket is right there, and she's grabbing onto the woman in the brown jacket's leg. Alex is not complying with being arrested. This is the man in gray, the officer with the gray jacket, and that's Alex's leg up in the air right there. This agent in green and this agent in gray are really who to pay special attention to, this individual and this individual. Okay, let me back up again. Okay, there's no doubt that the agent in green fires. You can see his arm react to the firing of his gun. He has his firearm out. He draws his gun as the man in black is taking Alex's gun out of his waist holster. And before that happened, this agent had what looked like OC spray in his hand. It looks like he's got spray in his hand of some sort. And then it's at this moment there, he switches it because he realizes Alex is armed. And this agent here in the gray is going to disarm Alex. A person who is carrying, or any person, it doesn't matter if you've already seen that they're carrying. They don't know what Alex has on him. They don't know if he has just one firearm on him. When they first engage with him, they don't know if he has any firearms. And you have to treat every suspect as if they might be armed. They may be armed because any suspect, any person that law enforcement engages with could be armed. They now know that Alex was armed, which means he might be armed with additional weapons. A person who carries one arm pretty often carries more than one. That's not unusual at all. And at this moment, the situation changes to, oh, we need to disarm this suspect who is non-compliant with us, which means they're already an elevated level of threat, right? This agent sees that and is, oh, I need to get coverage on the suspect because this law enforcement officer is trying to get compliance. This law enforcement officer is trying to get compliance. This law enforcement officer is disarming the person. And this law enforcement officer is paying attention to these two ladies. And then there's another law enforcement officer behind him who hasn't directly engaged in this situation. So this guy is going to draw his weapon, the man in the green, changes hands. His OC spray goes into his left hand. He reaches for his firearm. This officer and this officer are now coming in to try and assist in gaining compliance. This officer draws his weapon. I believe it is at this time, I don't know if we can hear it. I believe it's right around that moment that they shout gun. And all of these other officers turn to look at Pretti. Let me see if we can hear it. I think I might hear them saying gun, gun. I know it's not the best because there's so many whistles and whatnot, but we need to hear it. And then we can all arrive at a conclusion of whether or not we actually hear them saying gun, gun. I'm going to turn it up a little louder for you guys. I think I hear it said at least twice, gun, gun. And it's very important because right at this moment, the only officers who we can be 100% certain have an eye on the actual gun is the officer in gray and then the officer in green. We don't know if this officer has been able to see it or this officer, possibly this man on the ground is able to, the one with his back to us, and possibly this one has been able to see it. But we don't know for sure. And when the call goes out, gun, gun, you don't know, no officer does, whether it is a gun, the gun, or one of the guns, right? Yeah, I saw a post. I want to borrow something someone said that's so easy to forget as we do the analysis that we're doing here, as we do the breakdown that I'm attempting to do here, and just give you my non-expert opinion on all this and take on all this. It's so easy to forget that cops don't have an interconnected hive mind. It's so obvious. Yet anytime we look at an incident like this after the fact, and whether it's law enforcement situation or it's a military situation or it's in a sport situation, whether it's like your favorite football team or a racing situation, and you're looking at it after the fact, you have the benefit of the hindsight and the benefit of knowing so much more that the cops did not know, while at the same time not knowing what they do know or may have known. So it's just so easy for us to make misjudgments or create bad takes or come up with a skewed perspective on situations, because at the same time that we know so much more than the individuals involved at that moment knew, we also don't know what they did know at that moment, right? So, and at the same time, and it is also easy to disregard the fact that's so obvious that they don't have some sort of interconnected hive mind, where if one officer suddenly becomes aware of the firearm, all of a sudden all the other officers, and I've seen this so many times with this incident and with so many other shooting incidents, and where multiple law enforcement officers are involved like this in this crazy chaotic situation where they're trying to get compliance from someone, you'll see people comment, well, they already got the gun or they already disarmed him. Not all of these officers know that. And none of them know. At this moment, none of these officers know how many weapons Alex Pretti has. Not a single one is aware of that. Only half of them, maybe, are aware that he had a weapon. Now, I can go back to this. This is still the stabilized. This is the stabilized version, which is so helpful. Oh, it paused. They may have said gun, gun, gun. They may have said it more times. I know they said it at least twice. Now, you remember that earlier Alex had his phone black in his right hand. We haven't seen it reappear, but we know he was clenched up like this. And anytime we've seen his right hand, since this altercation began, it's either been down by his front right pocket area, hip area, or it's been up like this near his chest, right? Like when he's on the ground like this, or it's been down, which are both locations from which you could pull a firearm. And he has a black object in his hand that at a glance could appear to be a firearm. Okay, I'm gonna watch. Here comes I want to see the guy in gray. There's the guy in gray. Okay, there's the agent in gray. Look at how Alex, he has his knees under him, not compliant. He's not complying at all, and it's exposing his backside here and his lower back, which is how this agent starts to see his firearm. All right, that agent just took the firearm. And I want to see if Alex still has his phone in his hand. I can't see if he does. No, I can't see if he does. Can't tell. Let's go back to this video. And now I'm looking at the front. I'm trying to see if Alex still has his phone in his hand. I think he might. I think I just saw it up near his face. There's Alex's right shoulder and right arm. There's his hand. There's his right hand. It's not wide open, so I think his phone is still in it. I think that's his phone right there. Yeah. I think his phone is still in his right hand. Yeah, there. I mean, it looks right there like he's making a fit, like he's holding his hand like this. And this is that moment where this agent disarms him, and it appears he has something in his right hand. He's kept it close to his body the entire time. He's been tucked up the entire time. Agents are trying to get compliance. He's not complying. They're pulling his firearm from his waistband right there. This agent realizes what's going on. Here's the calls, gun, gun. Switches to his own firearm. There's Alex's hand again, and it looks like he's got something in his hand, which we know was his phone. But not all of these agents know that. Nor none of them could know whether or not he had actually pulled something else out and had switched, like this agent did, switched what was in his hand. Now this agent pulls his firearm, points it at Alex, and I think he fires the first shot. But I don't know that for sure, and we're going to get to that in a minute because there's something interesting about Alex's firearm. We need to hear from this agent and all of them. But I think what made him fire possibly is as the calls of gun go out and agents start to react to that and get a little bit of distance from Alex to try and appraise the situation, maybe to try and reorient around this person possibly being armed, because he's not complying. He's not letting them have his arms or his hands. He's keeping them tucked under. He's keeping his knees under him. So you can't see where the gun is. And I think this agent fired because Alex appears to be standing back up. That's when the first shot happened, right there. And I think he did it because, as you can see, Alex is still not complying and he has something in his hands. We're going to play it in real time. If you just watch Alex, you see that he's trying to get up. In fact, he gets his right leg underneath him and his right foot down underneath him. So when you break it down like this, it starts to make more and more sense why this shooting happened. And man, as ugly and tragic as it is, it makes sense. All right, just editing human coming in here again to give a little bit more info that I've learned since making the video, and also to just add a little bit more preface to the segment I'm about to do. I'm about to do a segment that's focused on the actual firearm that Alex Pretti had on him, the Sig P320, which is a very popular gun, but it's also a gun that has some controversy. And I'm going to get into some of that and explain that controversy to you and all those things and how it may be a factor in this incident. But we don't know for sure that it was. So part of the reason I'm doing this, and I'm going to talk about the firearm that he had on him and the things about it that may have made it a factor, we don't know, is because Trump and others in his administration have raised the issue of this specific firearm. And Trump, in particular, in like the day or a couple days after the shooting, in this 5-minute interview with the Wall Street Journal, in which he said things I do like, he commented on this specific gun that Pretti had. And Trump called it, quote, very dangerous gun, a dangerous and unpredictable gun. It's a gun that goes off when people don't know it. So that is the thing about this firearm, is it has this controversy of uncommanded, unintentional firings. And Trump raised that issue immediately after it. And a lot of times when Trump raises something like that, it's because he knows something. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. Trump will say something that seems completely out of left field or out of bounds, or where, nobody else has that information. And then a long time later, after more investigation, after more information comes out, more disclosures, turns out Trump was exactly right and knew exactly what he was talking about. And he had a reason for saying what he said and saying it in the way that he said it. This may be one of those times. So that's part of my motivation into going into this, is that if, in fact, another additional reason is if the gun did accidentally discharge, it makes the shooting make even more sense. It also adds to the tragedy of it, but it colors the situation in a way that actually makes it just more understandable. The other piece of information, which just broke just now at 7 p.m. as I'm editing this video, is that an initial report was made available to Congress, and CBS News got a copy of it. And it's a report from the Border Patrol. And it's a preliminary review by the Office of Professional Responsibility. And we don't have the full report. I wish we did. But what it says is that on Saturday morning, when an officer was, quote, confronted by two female civilians blowing whistles, so those are the two females we already looked at in the video, the officer ordered the women to, quote, move out of the roadway, the report said. When Border Patrol officers then encountered Pretti. So those two females we saw, they're telling them to get out of the roadway, and then Pretti comes around And of course, they end up telling him to get out of the roadway. Quote, the CBP, so Customs and Border Patrol officer, pushed them both away, Pretti and the female, and one of the females ran to a male, later identified as 37-year-old Alex Jeffrey Pretti, a U.S. citizen. The Border Patrol officer attempted to move the woman and Pretti out of the roadway. The woman and Pretti did not move. The officer deployed his OC spray towards both Pretti and the woman. Then the agent attempted to take Pretti into custody. Pretti resisted CBP personnel's efforts and a struggle ensued. During the struggle, a BPA agent yelled, "He's got a gun," multiple times, the report said. Approximately 5 seconds later, a Border Patrol agent discharged his Border Patrol issued Glock 19, and a Border Patrol officer also discharged his Border Patrol issued Glock 47 at Pretti. After the shooting, a BPA advised he had possession. BPA agent, Border Patrol agent, advised he had possession of Pretti's firearm. The BPA, so the Border Patrol agent, subsequently cleared and secured Pretti's firearm in his vehicle. The new information provided by Border Patrol differs from initial accounts offered by Department of Homeland Security, which said in a statement over the weekend that one Border Patrol agent had fired defensive shots. I would not characterize their shooting as defensive shots. In that statement, DHS also said Pretti approached the CBP agents with a 9mm semi-automatic firearm. That doesn't appear to be the case. Although, technically, in a way, he has it on him and he's coming towards them. But he doesn't have it out. And the way they worded it made it seem like he had it out. The report to Congress does not make a claim that matches that statement. In the hours after the shooting, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem alleged that Pretti approached federal agents with a gun in what she described as an effort to kill officers. And Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino accused Pretti of trying to, quote, massacre law enforcement, allegations that did not appear in the OPR's report. And then it goes on to mention that the report does not state that Pretti's gun discharged accidentally, one theory that has circulated in the wake of the shooting. President Trump alleged in a Wall Street Journal article that Pretti was carrying a, quote, dangerous and unpredictable gun that goes off when people don't know it. So, the segment I'm about to do about this specific firearm, it might be skippable. It may turn out that there was no negligent discharge or uncommanded discharge, and so it's not a factor at all in this shooting. But I'm still going to leave this segment in because it could be an issue. We don't know for sure. So, but just FYI, this initial report obtained by CBS does not mention there being some sort of discharge of Pretti's firearm. So this next segment, may not apply. There's something else that you should be aware of, although we don't know that this is a situation. So this gun, this is the Sig P320, which is an extremely popular firearm. There's versions of it for the U.S. military, and lots of law enforcement agencies use this firearm. It is not the type of firearm you would find on a typical criminal, and Alex was not a typical criminal. He wasn't a criminal at all. He didn't have any criminal history. This is a firearm for the discerning firearm owner. It's a good gun. However, it's also a controversial gun because it has people have been able to create negligent discharge or uncommanded discharges with that firearm. I want to talk to you about that because the firearm involved here is a factor that may become part of this incident. If there was a negligent discharge or an uncommanded discharge, an accidental firing of this firearm, as some people think there may have been, at the very moment that the officer in gray walks away after disarming him, then officers may have fired in response to that. Instead of them firing because of him standing up, they may have fired because the gun accidentally went off as he was being disarmed. And so I have this tab unmuted, and I want you to watch the guy in gray to see if you think that firearm went off as he's walking away from the incident. If you watch right there at that exact moment, see that? Watch the man in gray and watch his right arm. Oh shit. I want to show you another angle. We're going to watch it again at that exact moment. I'll watch it a third time, again, watching the man in gray and his right arm, which is holding Alex's gun. It does appear that the exact moment the shot goes off, that his arm and hand react, and then it causes the other officers to shoot. This is something that's just a possibility. I'm not sure that this is what happened, but it is a possibility, and a few things line up with it being a possibility. I'm going to show you a little bit about the P320 and these negligent discharges. And actually, before I play this video, I need to correct something. I keep on saying negligent discharge. It's an uncommanded discharge. It's like it goes off, but it's not a negligent discharge is something else. So anyway, there's a huge debate about this gun. You may recall, you may have seen in the news and social media, there's a huge debate about this gun. There's been 100 lawsuits or more than 100 lawsuits about the gun. And there's been all sorts of allegations. There's an accidental death of a U.S. Air Force person that was blamed on this gun. But still, it's a super popular gun, and there's versions of it that have been issued to the military and all sorts of law enforcement agencies. Although I think either ICE, I think it was ICE recalled it, and they don't want their agents carrying it anymore. So, or it might have been Border Patrol, either ICE or Border Patrol. But what I want to show you is just how it happens. And there has to be, it's not just it'll just go off randomly. There has to be some sort of interference, some sort of pressure applied in a unique way that causes it to go off. And this guy did a demonstration with it that reliably replicates that situation that causes it to go off. And it's a bit weird, but the situation, to my understanding, is it will go off in a circumstance where the trigger is slightly depressed, but not fully depressed to where you want the gun to go off. The trigger is slightly depressed, and then pressure or impact is applied somewhere along the slide. That's what causes it to go off. And this guy, what he's doing, he doesn't have blanks, but he has cartridges with just a fresh primer in them. And he's going to put these cartridges in the gun with just the primer. So there's no bullet, there's no gunpowder, it's just the primer charge. And he's going to cause this gun to repeatedly go off, even though no one is fully pulling the trigger. Instead, what he's doing is he's placing a screw in front of the trigger so that the trigger is just slightly depressed. If the trigger is not depressed whatsoever, I haven't seen any evidence that the gun will go off. Whether you beat it, whether you hit it with a hammer, drop it, it won't go off. The trigger has to be slightly depressed, but not to the point where you are actually commanding it to go off and there being an impact or pressure.
Where will it go off again? Will it release? Let's see. That's 3 in a row. Let me take the screw out. Number 4. Let's try it again. This is just the clip.
he's already done. That was the third time. Now he's going to do it a fourth time.
Let me show you.
That's the device that is in question.
Fully functioning striker safety.
It's got an internal striker safety. And when pressure is just right and the components, the trigger assembly is just slightly depressed, pressure in the right area of the slide will cause it to discharge.
All right. Should we do it with the magazine again? Let's put the magazine back in, and then we'll try the last one with the magazine out. Handy dandy trigger input tool. We are going to try to, dang, sorry about that. I'm trying to get over a sinus thing and a cough. We're going to try to simulate all right, here we go. Again, we are roughly, as we saw on the tabletop, I'm guessing we're roughly 1 millimeter to less than 1 millimeter of engagement on that trigger. And let's see if we can get it to go off again.
Now, this company, I really like their video, and I'm going to play a good portion of it where they break it down. This is from Omaha Outdoors YouTube channel, and they put this video out. This is 8 years ago. This gun's been around for 10 years plus. This is 8 years ago where they were doing a drop test with it, and what they figured out, and this was after the Dallas PD had concerns with a going off when it was dropped. And what they did was they found out that if the gun was dropped a certain way, it wouldn't. But if it was dropped in just the right way, that caused the trigger to also partially engage, the gun would go off almost every time. I shouldn't say that. Would go off. I'm just going to say that. It would trigger a discharge.
All of these drop tests require that the pistol be dropped with the bore axis.
He's talking about regular drop tests, like in as part of just like regular testing, they drop the gun in ways that don't actually cause it to go off.
Perpendicular to or parallel to, in some fashion, the ground or the surface which the P320 is being dropped. We found in our testing that the P320 will fire if it is dropped at a certain angle. This angle is not found in any of the previously mentioned drop tests. If the pistol is allowed to drop with the bore in an upward direction and the frame and the slide contact the ground at the same time, the trigger continues to move to the rear and the pistol will fire. We found this result was consistent across calibers, frame sizes, and even different types of ammunition, from duty ammunition from major manufacturers, which supply the majority of the U.S. law enforcement market, to range ammunition and match ammunition. Calibers, frame.
All right, I'm going to pause it because I want you to watch in the video here. And I'm going to get off of this topic pretty quick or shortly, but I do think this is worth keeping in mind as a possibility. And I think it's something that if his gun did accidentally go off, it's going to become the thing. If his gun did not accidentally go off or go off at all, then it's not going to be mentioned. But so this would just be a waste of time. But because it's this particular firearm that has this history, it's worth keeping in mind as a possibility. So if you watch the firearm, just watch the trigger, okay? And watch how the trigger moves as it gets impacted. What's happening is not that the trigger goes all the way to the back, fully engages, and causes the firearm to go off. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that the trigger slightly depresses as there is an impact on the slide, and that is what causes the discharge to occur, because that mechanism gets just slightly still engaged, but it's not fully engaged. And because it's not fully engaged, as the trigger is just slightly depressed, that impact then causes it to discharge. So when we look back at this video, of this guy disarming, I can't tell that his finger is fully outside the guard. I mean, I would assume it is, but I can't fully tell. It looks like he's just holding the handle of it. And he doesn't look down at the gun as if, oh, that just went off. And as he crosses here, I can't tell. I can't tell that it's no, I can't tell. So this officer does not react as if that gun just went off unexpectedly, does he? His body language doesn't demonstrate that, but his arm does go out slightly as if he's reacting from a discharge they didn't expect. I really can't tell if his finger's inside the trigger. His finger's definitely not like this. It's not like he's holding the firearm like this, right? It's like he's holding it like this. He's just holding the handle, which he very well may be. We also don't see the gun take any kind of impact that would cause this discharge. So this may not at all be applicable. This may not at all be a factor here. His gun may not have discharged. But I thought because that is the firearm he had, and it has this sort of history, and also if you look at his trigger, actually, let me look that trigger up. Okay, I'm gonna move. I'm gonna move my video capture thing. I went and looked at Sig's website and just comparing them, and I don't think there's anything custom. I don't think the trigger's custom. It's a Sig trigger. So it is a custom Sig, but I think it's custom from Sig, and I don't think there's anything to investigate there. So, all right, I'm going to move off of this topic again. It may not be a factor at all. We don't know right now, though, and so I wanted to raise it as a possibility. All right, now I'm going to go back to final comments on the shooting itself. Where does my video go that I wanted to use? And then we're going to go into a little bit more talking about the context of what went down and developing a greater understanding of the environment this thing is occurring in and this administration's response to it. So one more time, the stabilized version here, which is just the best version really to watch. This falls very, very well into the category of a shoot that is understandable that it happened. It's the type of shoot that these events are trying to create. These direct action activities, this interference with law enforcement, the whistles, everything about it, they're trying to create incidents like this because these incidents are exploitable because it's not super black and white. It's not 100% clearly wrong. It's not 100% clearly right. And I don't mean as after you break it down, it's not 100%. I mean, it's not 100% obvious to anybody just at a 30-second glance, whether it's right or wrong. It occurs in that middle ground, in that gray area that is exploitable and where tensions can get really inflamed. An incident that was very, very clearly what we would call a good shoot would not get this kind of reaction. And an incident that was clearly a bad shoot also would not get this kind of reaction. What needs to be in order for there to be the maximum amount of contentiousness and friction between these groups and citizens and law enforcement and administrations at local, state, and federal level is there to be some sort of ambiguity, some sort of question, some sort of exploitable gray area. And this incident definitely has that in more than one way. My final opinion of how it went down, I think I've already said this, but I'm just going to be super clear right now. My final right now, based on the information we have, based on the video and the sounds, what I think occurred is that Alex Pretti was not being compliant, had a bunch of agents on top of him who were trying to place him under arrest. One of the agents locates a firearm on him. One of the agents might have been the same one that located the firearm, might not have been, but one agent starts saying gun, gun, gun. Other agents react to that and withdraw their firearms. And as they back away, because they're the agents that are closest to him are trying to figure out, wait, where's the gun? Where's the gun? And they back away a little bit. Alex tries to stand up, and he still has his phone in his hand. And the agent in green, I believe, is the person who fires first. And then that causes the other agents to begin firing. And all law enforcement is trained to fire until the threat is neutralized. And in most instances, being neutralized means the person or the threat is completely still. You can see their hands, you can see that they're clear, they're not holding anything. Yeah. And that's why you hear so many gunshots. And at the end of the day, I don't think that any of these agents committed a crime. I don't think they murdered him. I really don't think any of them did anything wrong. I'm sure several of them wish they could do this incident over again in a way that I'm sure they all wish this incident they could go back in time and try and have this situation unfold in a different way that didn't lead to the death of a person. But the situation was created by Alex Pretti. The situation was created by Alex Pretti and the group he's there with, who are actively interfering with officers and law enforcement, and they are baiting them into altercations that then create these type of situations. And this is not Alex's first rodeo either. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Alex had a confrontation with federal agents last week in which his rib was broke. Just now from CNN and confirmed by other news sources, federal immigration officers have been collecting personal information about protesters and agitators in Minneapolis, sources told CNN, and had documented details about Alex Pretti before he was shot to death on Saturday. It is unclear how Pretti first came to the attention of federal authorities, but sources told CNN that about a week before his death, he suffered a broken rib when a group of federal officers tackled him while he was protesting their attempt to detain other individuals. In a statement, DHS said that DHS law enforcement has no record of the incident, but a memo sent earlier this month to agents temporarily assigned to the city asked them to capture all images, license plate identifications, and general information on hotels, agitators, and protesters. Pretti's previous encounter is another reflection, blah, blah, blah. That's commentary. I'm going to skip that. So, not his first rodeo. Actually, possibly not even his second rodeo. The Washington Post had a story on January 24th that was about Pretti and had some interviews with some of his coworkers and a neighbor who was named Gray, I think. It's at the very bottom of this. Chris Gray, a special education math teacher, lives in Pretti's apartment building, or lives near his apartment building. And Gray said that while he did not know Pretti well, the shooting felt personal. Gray has been patrolling the streets as one of many local volunteers monitoring ICE. Scare quotes around monitoring ICE. Yeah. So he says, it feels like these killings are just what happens now. Well, if you interfere with law enforcement, you're going to get into an altercation with them because you're committing a felony federal crime. But this same article was updated about 24 hours later with another interview with someone who knew Pretti, and it's Green, Joshua Green. Pretti had another physical encounter with immigration officers recently, according to a colleague, Joshua Green, who recalled him coming to work with a bandage on his eye. Pretti said he got a small cut after being struck by an immigration agent. Green said and mentioned protesting in the wake of the shooting of Renee Good. Green said Pretti was not easily provoked or angry. He was very calm, a collected person, and always had a good demeanor. He always had a smile. This is quite the shock. Another colleague, Caitlin McLean, said Pretti told her that he had recently been hurt during an altercation with federal immigration agents who he said had knelt on his back. So he is this guy has been getting into scuffles with law enforcement. In fact, it's not even new. Pretti also participated in the wave of street protests following the murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer in 2020, according to his ex-wife. Quote, "These kinds of things, you know, he felt the injustice to it," said the ex-wife, who spoke on the condition of anonymity. Family and friends said they were stunned by Pretti's death, et cetera, et cetera. And then it goes on. This is the rest of the article. So they got more quotes they added into this article about 24 hours later, which might be why people have been slow to catch up. But that might be why that CNN article seems like this brand new news about this new altercation. But it was actually WAPO had information from interviews with people who knew him that he had been in at least one, sounds like more than one, altercation with law enforcement, with immigration enforcement. This guy was going out and agitating. This guy was not monitoring ICE. This guy was provoking, and he was getting into altercations. And you know what? It might have been better if he had been arrested sooner. It might have saved his life if he had been arrested and charged with interference with law enforcement sooner, or maybe not. But yeah, all right. Just wanted to put that in, and that's part of the context. Here's what else is part of the context, and this is we'll gain more understanding of what's going on in Minneapolis, what's going on in Minnesota. So I was trying to archive an article from the Minnesota Star Tribune, and this really neat thing happened where their homepage, there's a whole bunch of archives of it, and it just so happens to perfectly tell a story over the past 6 weeks of ICE agents deploying to Minnesota, people being detained, police responding, Ilhan Omar getting involved, thousands marching in protest of ICE in South Minneapolis. DHS Secretary Noem goes to Minnesota as part of largest immigration operation ever. That was on 6th of January of this year. Shots fired at federal law enforcement officers. Thousands gathered to memorialize Renee Good. ICE agent identified as state and federal officials clash over shooting investigation. Minnesota launches its own probe of the ICE shooting. FBI has their own probe of it. More protesters, more anti-ICE protesters. Trump threatening to send troops. Governor Walz, or reportedly DOJ investigating Governor Walz and Mayor Frey for obstructing law enforcement. More protest and more protest. Jake Lang going down there and being the grifter that he is and creating more incidents. Paratroopers on standby. Department of Justice investigating the protesters who interrupted that service. I've done a couple videos on that if you're interested. Border Patrol commander defends his comments and defends the raids on these immigrants who are wanted of crimes, and they have warrants for their arrest. Appeals court siding with ICE. And there's this long story. And then one of the most key things is there's, in the context of all of this, is that there's a massive financial fraud scandal in Minnesota right now. It's been going on for a couple years. There's been, what was it? Like 90 fraud cases. I want to say it was close to 100 fraud cases in Minnesota that involved the daycares and the leering centers and all sorts of fraudulent fake businesses that were receiving grants, but they didn't actually exist. It's been going on for years. The indictments against this kind of stuff started a couple years ago, and now it's blowing up publicly, but it's been going on for years. And then Trump posted, let's see, this is after the shooting, but he highlighted how Waltz and Frey and other Democrats are not cooperating with federal law enforcement. And state and local police have been ordered to not cooperate with federal law enforcement as federal law enforcement is going and conducting these raids, these operations to take into custody people who they have arrest warrants for or deportation warrants for. And because they're not cooperating, it's making things that much more difficult, and it's a feature, not a bug of the situation. DHS and ICE are also getting tons of threats from people, and you don't see any Democrats really trying to stop that. And then this right here by Eric Schwalm, who's a retired Green Beret. He really highlights what is happening and puts a context in it, and I would like to share this with you. He says, as a former Special Forces warrant officer with multiple rotations running counterinsurgency ops, both hunting insurgents and trying to separate them from sympathetic populations, I've seen organized resistance up close. From Anbar to Helmand provinces in Afghanistan, the pattern is familiar. Spotters, cutouts, dead drops, or the modern equivalent, disciplined comms, role specialization, and a willingness to absorb casualties while bleeding the stronger force slowly. What's unfolding in Minneapolis right now isn't protest. It's low-level insurgency infrastructure built by people who've clearly studied the playbook. There are signal groups that have 1,000 members per zone. Not just one signal group, and you guys have maybe heard about this, but there's been several signal groups. I have a list of them right here. So there's Ward 4 right there. Ward 5. This is for Northeast, Southeast. Let's see, University and Code. So it has directions along which areas of the city are. So this one is called Ward 4 Minneapolis RR Alerts, Ward 5 Minneapolis RR Alerts, ICE Rapid Response, West Bank, FT Federal Threat Uptown and Whittier, Federal Threat Phil and Forn, aka the truest South Side, Long and So Rapid Response for Longfellow and Seward. And then there's more. Downtown, North Loop, rapid response west of BDE, Maca, and SCA. I don't know what those are acronyms for. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's a list of almost a dozen Minneapolis signal chats that these protesters have created in order for them to share information on the identity of ICE agents and their operations and who they're going after, all of everything they can think of thrown into these chats. And these chats have 1,000 members, which is the cap. They have hundreds to 1,000 members. These people also have dedicated roles. There's people who are mobile chasers, who are plate checkers, who are logging vehicle data into shared databases. There's 24/7 dispatch nodes vectoring assets. There's salute style reporting. So that's size, activity, location, unit, time, equipment. And they're doing that on suspected federal vehicles, which to me, that kind of seems like the thing that Alex Pretti was doing when he's in that street right there. See him right there? And he's directed that vehicle past him and he's recording it. They're logging who's in the area and they're trying to identify ICE agents, what they're wearing, what vehicles they're using, their license plates. I think that's his role. I don't know that for sure, but on that day at that time, he's not just walking from home to work or to the grocery store. He's engaged as part of a group who are conducting operations. There's also, back to this Twitter post, or ex post. There's daily chat rotations and timed deletions in order to frustrate forensic recovery. There's vetting processes for new people who join the chats. There's mutual aid from sympathetic locals, teachers providing cover, possible police department tip-offs on license plate lookups. There's home-based coordination points. There's rapid escalation from observation to physical obstruction or worse. This isn't spontaneous outrage. This is C2, command and control, with redundancy, OPSEC hygiene, and task organization that would make a Special Forces team sergeant nod in recognition. If you replace ICE agents with occupying coalition forces, the structure maps almost 1-to-1. That's the line that made this post hit home for me. I started thinking about the mid 2000s, like he says, into 2010s, and U.S. and NATO coalition forces in the Middle East conducting operations to track down and break up terrorist cells in Iraq and Afghanistan. And exactly the kind of things you would see there, with protesters, with bad actors hidden amongst them, certain individuals in the crowd acting as lookouts, and all of these things. It's exactly like what we saw in the Middle East in the war on terror. Right? The most sobering part of all of this is it's domestic. It's funded, these people are trained, and they're directed by people who live in the same country they're trying to paralyze law enforcement in. When your own citizens build and operate this level of parallel intelligence and rapid response network against federal officers, complete with doxing, vehicle pursuits, and harassment that's already turned lethal, you're no longer dealing with civil disobedience. You're facing a distributed resistance that's learned the lessons of successful insurgencies. They try to stay below the kinetic threshold most of the time, force overreaction when possible, and maintain popular support through narrative, and never present a single center of gravity. He goes on. He says, I spent years training partner forces to dismantle exactly this kind of apparatus. Now pieces of it are standing up in American cities, enabled by elements of local government and civil society that should keep every American awake at night. Not because I want escalation, but because history shows these things don't de-escalate on their own once the infrastructure exists and the cadre believe they're winning the information war. We either recognize what we're actually looking at, or we pretend it's still just activism until the structures harden and spread. It's your call, America, but from where I said this isn't January 2026 politics anymore. It's phase one of something we've spent decades trying to keep off our own soil. And this post is one of the main reasons why I made this video. Not because I'm trying to convince you that we're on the verge of civil war or you need to go out and do something. It's because we need to support this administration and encourage this administration to take down this structure. Well, that's first one part of it. They need to be indicting and charging all of these people with the harshest penalties they can. They need to be seizing these signal chats and shutting them down. They need to shut down this is a counterinsurgency. And that whole post makes me think about how Rich Higgins was right. And if any of this post about counterinsurgency and if you replace ICE agents with occupying coalition forces and the structure maps, that means like, what are you talking about? These people these leftist protesters somehow are the same thing as Islamic radicals in the Middle East? Yeah, they kind of are the same thing. And if you want to know more about how they're the same thing, sometimes it's called the Red Green Alliance, but it's Islamist and their natural proclivity to be an ally to cultural Marxist in the West. They want the same thing, which is the destruction of American and Western civilization. And their values line up very, very well, as do their operations. And it was all detailed in something called the Higgins Memo by Rick Higgins, who used to be part of Trump's National Security Council back in the first admin. And he pointed out this alliance. He's not the only one to ever point it out. But that's why you see people on the left support Hamas and Hezbollah. That's why you see people on the left be completely mute, just no comment at all on Iranian civilians being slaughtered by the regime there. But full force attack against Israel, or people on the left attacking U.S. military or NATO forces, but not having anything to say about jihadis. There's an alliance between leftism and Islamist. It's very well known, including to them. They know about it. They identify with each other. It's the same. They engage in the same political warfare. Hey, it's just editing human coming in. I'm working on this video, trying to get it out tonight to my Substack subscribers. And we're about to have a change of tone in the episode and move into some criticism of the Trump admin. And so I expect that's probably not going to land well with some people, perhaps land well with others. Mostly what I want is not for people to agree with me. What I really want is for people to hear me out and to us to find some understanding here and to appreciate where I'm coming from. We may disagree, but if we can appreciate each other's points of views, then we can probably find some things too that we do agree on, and, you know, maybe make each other think a little bit, enlighten one another, whatnot. You know, that's how good discourse comes about. And since there's about to be, it's the middle of the video, or actually getting towards the end of the video, and I haven't done any self-promotion in it, and since I'm about to probably offend a few people, I thought it might be a good time to go ahead and do some self-promotion. So I am just human, also known as Kyle, and my link tree is in the description of the show and also in the profile, wherever you're listening or watching this. And you can go to my link tree, and there you'll find all the places to follow me, all the places to watch, all the places to listen to my podcast, and all the different ways to support what I do. I love to do this research primarily with court cases, which there may be a court case that comes out of this, in which case I'd be very interested in following it. It's possible, I haven't mentioned this in the episode, but I'll mention it now. It's possible that local authorities, like a DA in Minneapolis, might decide they want to charge the ICE or the Border Patrol agents who fired the shots. That's a real possibility. I would follow that court case, and I like following court cases. Mostly I like going to the documents. I like doing fact-finding missions and trying to unearth the evidence for the hypotheses or against the hypotheses that I might come up with. And to me, it's just all about trying to figure out what in the world is going on. And I absolutely hate overreaction to things, and I definitely hate falsehoods, misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And those are the kinds of things that get me the most upset, which then gets me into a loop of reacting, which I try not to react. I try to understand. Happens to be a little bit of a phrase I throw around here and there, that understanding is greater than reacting. So anyway, if you like what I do and you're enjoying this video, I would really appreciate it if you liked it. And if you know someone who would appreciate this video, then I would appreciate it if you shared it with them or just share it on your socials. And if you really, really like it and you're so inclined, I run on caffeine. I need coffee. I need a few dollars here and there to buy documents on Pacer. And if you want to get something for yourself and use one of my links, such as some honey or some bootleg products, some chili or salsa, man, it's chilly weather I'm at. I don't know about you guys, but it is single-digit temperatures right now outside. And a hot bowl of chili sounds amazing to me right now, especially with fresh jalapenos in it. Damn, That sounds so good to me right now. Anyway, I can't do this without your support. And the core of my support is over at justhuman.substack.com. And that is where I put out my podcast. That's where I put out my articles, which are typically long form articles. And that's also where I put out my newsletter covering various court cases that I like to track, such as Antifa cases, the Comey case, Maduro, the J5 pipe bomber, John Bolton case, Smartmatic, all these. If it has a political element, a dose of espionage, public corruption, that's my kind of case. And I put this newsletter out either every 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how much court news there is. The Don Lemon case is definitely going to feature in an upcoming episode if he's indicted, which I think he might be in front of a grand jury or I think a charges might be in front of a grand jury this week for him. So that newsletter is the only thing on my Substack that requires a paid subscription. It's $7 a month. You're basically buying me a cup of coffee and throwing a few dollars my way so I can keep buying court documents. But issue 6 of that newsletter is free for everyone to read. So if you think you might be interested in a newsletter like that, go over to justhuman.substack.com, check out issue number 6 of the Just Cases newsletter, and there you'll get a sample of the type of material and work that I present in the newsletter. If it looks like something you'd be interested in, please consider a paid subscription. And to everybody who is a paid subscriber over at my Substack, thank you so much. You're the core of my support, and I couldn't do this without you. I really appreciate it. All right. Now, about the next segment, I got to do some editing of it. I kind of lost my temper in a few places. I'm going to be honest. I lost my temper in a few places. And it's because of really bad mistakes members of the Trump admin are making, which I'm going to go over. That's the whole point of the segment. It's criticism of the responses. But I also lost my temper because I've been predicting this and I've been calling it out. And I don't really feel heard on that or understood on it by some folks. And they've let me know in the comments that they didn't appreciate my criticism back then. And I'm not even really saying I explained myself that well, and especially in the 7-minute video I put out on YouTube and Rumble. But just because I didn't explain myself well doesn't mean I didn't have a point. And it doesn't mean I wasn't right. And I'm damn right about some of this stuff. And I'm not the only one who sees it, and I'm not the only one who's been calling it out. I'm not convinced the administration is hearing us on it. And I'm not coming from a place of wanting to criticize. I'm coming from a place of wanting the administration to course correct. And the course correct doesn't have to be on ICE enforcement or really any other objective, any other operation they're engaged in. They just need to rein in their damn social media game and stop making off-the-cuff comments at press conferences and in interviews and let their work speak for itself. They're engaging in a narrative game they can't win. There are some narrative games they can win, quite a few of them. But they're in the immediate aftermath of this ICE shooting. There have been huge blunders by Trump, Cash, Nome, the Bovino guy for Border Patrol, possibly others. And it's not new. It's not a new thing. This administration has been getting suckered into these narrative games, and it's really, they're missing short putts, and it's not good. And that's why I'm upset about it, is because they are doing so much good, and it's these blunders that are going to get highlighted instead of the great successes the administration is having. And I 100% support this administration. I don't want anyone fired. I want to be clear. I don't want anybody fired. I don't want, well, of the people I'm going to cover, I don't want any of them fired. I don't want Nome fired. I don't want Homan, Bovino, Cash, Bondi. I don't want any of them fired. I don't want any of them demoted. I don't want any of them to be pulled out of Minnesota. I just want them to do the work and keep supporting the agents on the ground and the officers on the ground doing the work. And I want them to not capitulate to the opposition. And particularly, I don't want them to capitulate to these domestic terrorist groups and this counterinsurgency. That'd be the worst thing they could do. So that's where I'm coming from. And I think a lot of you can join me in that sentiment, even if you may disagree with my criticism here and there. And even if you think it doesn't really matter as much, I'm telling you guys it matters. And you know what? I hope I'm proven wrong on that, but I think I've already been proven right. All right, so I'm gonna let this go into the next segment. I'm gonna splice this bit in, this self-promotion, but also this bit of a disclaimer and intro into the video. And there's a bit of a change of tone. I'm just warning you ahead of time. And I'm also asking for your input in the comments, your thoughtful input in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. So, all right, back to the video. Look, I fully back these ICE operations. They need to not slow down whatsoever. They need to continue. And if it means bringing in National Guard to assist, and that's what it means, I don't think the Insurrection Act is needed. And I think to bring in the Insurrection Act, especially if it's done when it's not, I don't want to say desperately needed. I think the Insurrection Act, the calls for the Insurrection Act are a trap. If he does it, because if Trump uses it prematurely, it just feeds into the narrative that this is some sort of terrible, tyrannical government. It's all about how that narrative, how that messaging plays out. And this is a battle for the narrative. And recently I've had criticism for this admin and how they've engaged in the narrative war. You know, it's difficult to communicate at times because it is very nuanced. But I have real criticism of them because they're often too quick to engage in a narrative battle, and they say the wrong things, and they pick battles that they don't need to pick. And they should just as I've said, they should just let the results of their work be the signal instead of trying to make dunking online and viral social media posts and whatnot be the signal. You need to forget that. Quit playing those stupid games and just do the work and let your press releases and statements and the indictments, let those be the signal. Let your presence be the signal. And they've been messing up. And when it came to this Alex Pretti shooting, unfortunately, a number of people in the admin messed up in the initial phase, and it matters. It matters a lot. Trump messed up with his very first post about it. He wrote, "This is the gunman's gun," same picture DHS put out. "This is the gunman's gun loaded with 2 additional full magazines and ready to go. What is that all about? Where are the local police? Why weren't they allowed to protect ICE officers? The mayor and the governor called them off. It is stated that many of these police were not allowed to do their job and that ICE had to protect themselves. Not an easy thing to do." And then he goes on about Ilhan Omar and the fraud in Minnesota and the billions of dollars that are missing and all the illegal criminals that are there and the Biden's open border policy, and goes on and on and on. But this is a huge mess up by Trump. It's completely irrelevant. One, Pretti was lawfully carrying. He was lawfully carrying. Was he wise to lawfully carry and then engage in the stuff that he was engaging in? No. But this kind of post does not sit well with me as a 2A guy. I do not like seeing this at all. The first line should be, why did Pretti physically engage with federal officers while they were performing their duties? And the National Rifle Association, like, there's nothing that says you can't carry an extra magazine. Thousands of law-abiding Americans do this every day. It's standard. I've never carried my firearm and not also carried an extra magazine or two, ever. Ever. The Border Patrol lead who in the this whole operation is Bovino. This guy, he's U.S. Border Patrol Commander at Large, I think is what they're calling, Greg Bovino. And he gave a statement on the incident that just completely backfired.
5 a.m. Central Standard Time, as DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien, Jose Huerta Chuma. You can see this illegal alien on the screen to my left and right. That is Jose Huerta Chuma, whose criminal history includes domestic assault to intentionally inflict bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. During this operation, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
Did he have that on him? Yes. Did he approach law enforcement with it? When you say it like that, it makes it sound like he had it out, and he didn't.
The agents attempted to disarm the individual, but he violently resisted.
That characterization of the incident we just watched videos of over and over again does not, it's not a good way to describe the situation.
Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, a Border Patrol agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene.
I can agree with that characterization, because he was resisting, and after calls for gun, and the officers start to get a little bit of distance, try and figure out where the gun is, Pretti goes to stand up. And he, at that time, I believe, had something in his hand. I think he still had his phone in his hand. So if an officer is shouting gun, and you still got an object in your hand, and you've been resisting for all the time leading up to that moment, it's reasonable for an officer to think that what's in your hand might be a weapon.
Immediately delivered medical aid to the...
So this was a huge screw up by Bovino. One of many screw ups that he has made recently, I'm going to get to in a moment. Christy Nome also posted, DHS law enforcement was conducting a targeted operation. During the operation, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. No, that is not a fair characterization or an accurate characterization of what went down. That makes it sound like he had it out in his hand and was coming at officers with it, and they tried to disarm him, but he was resisting them disarming him violently. And that doesn't really fit what we watched in the videos. And then Cash made a big error. He went on, Maria Arteromo, and said,
who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines.
Wait, what?
No one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines.
What?
No one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines.
Tens of millions of Trump supporters carry firearms every single day. And in many states, it's lawful to carry them to a protest or an event or a rally or a state fair or whatever. And they all carry extra magazines, or not all of them, but a lot of them. And it says nothing about their intentions. It says nothing about your intentions that you carry a firearm with you and 2 magazines, other than you intend on protecting yourself. But it doesn't. This statement is so flawed, it blows my mind. It blows my mind that the FBI director said that. Now, in some states, it's not legal to go to a protest or a public event gathering with a firearm. but in many states it's legal, and in lots of and including in Minnesota.
That is not a peaceful protest, and you do not get to touch law enforcement.
So he says you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines.
You know, a lot of protests are peaceful because people are armed. Cash didn't apologize or walk back, but he seemed to try and defend it with some comments he made on Sean Hannity later that night.
And I've also told stories that,
or maybe it was the next night. I don't remember. Let me get this audio back up.
you know, in situations, if I knew I was on camera and I could get away from a confrontation, knowing that I had the ability to defend myself, I would turn and hightail it and run rather than ever have to pull out a weapon.
That's okay. We call that wisdom. That's wisdom. There's nothing wrong at all with carrying. I carry a lot. I think almost every man in my immediate and extended family carries a firearm lawfully, and several of the women probably too. I know at least one does. I think several do. But if we're going into, and these are conversations my wife and I have had a number of times. If we're going into a situation where normally we would carry, but there's something about that situation that makes it inconvenient or perhaps not best to carry, we have a discussion and decide about it, right? And I'm sure you guys who listen who also carry, you have those conversations where you're like, okay, is this normally I would carry, but is it a good decision for me to carry into this situation where it's either going to create some big inconvenience or there's going to be areas that I won't be able to go because I'm carrying. And even though I disagree with such regulations or laws or whatever, I can't do anything about them at this moment. And then I've had at least one experience. There's been more than one, I think, but there's one that really sends out my mind where I was lawfully carrying and well, I was going to be carjacked. And instead of defending myself and my car and like going over the top with a defense of myself, I got myself out of the situation. So I could have drawn, but instead I decided not to draw and I decided to get out of the situation. And I've had a number of those incidents where I'm carrying and I could have I was lawfully carrying. I've always never unlawfully carried, but I've been in a situation where there was an option to stand my ground, so to speak, and I would have been in the right to do so. I would have been able to lawfully do so and defend myself. But instead of going that route, I decided I'm getting out. That's just wisdom.
If you have a weapon, do you belong in an environment that is as contentious as this weekend? Do you bear responsibility knowing that you have a firearm with you, what that could do to a situation?
Before Cash's answer, I'm going to say yes. Yes, because if you're exercising your 2A right, you are also exercising or required to take into account your responsibility at the same time.
Well, Sean, like you said, we truly, fully support the Second Amendment, people's right to bear arms. But when you enter into a situation, a volatile situation like Minnesota, where there were riots on the streets and people attacking federal law enforcement officers and ramming them with vehicles and continued criminality and burning down and literally destroying federal vehicles and stealing information, we have to ask people what's prudential, what's smart. And it's not smart to go out there with a fully loaded weapon. We're just saying be careful and be reasonable, like you've outlined. If you have a right to a permit for a firearm, that's okay. But you cannot incite violence and you cannot break the law and attack federal law enforcement.
I mean, he's not saying anything wrong, really, but it's also not the situation. he messed up. Cash messed up with his comment. Trump messed up with his comment. Bovino messed up with his comment. No messed up with his comment. For some reason, guys, for some reason, in the immediate aftermath of this incident, these people, this admin, several members of this admin, have decided to make this gun the thing. And I can understand it, but it is not the thing. The thing is Alex Pretti getting himself into a situation where he committed a crime that called for his immediate arrest. Border Patrol began to arrest him and he resisted. He physically resisted being arrested. Half a dozen law enforcement officers came over in order to get his compliance so that they could put the cuffs on him. And he was physically resisting them the entire time. While they were trying to get control of him, he maintained an object in his right hand, and they discovered he had a firearm in his waistband. He continued to resist physically their efforts to get compliance from him. And as they were disarming him, he tried to stand up with an object in his hand as the officers announced to each other that he was armed, resulting in him being shot. Is the gun a factor? Yes, the gun is a factor. But everything about what he did with that gun, as far as we know, was lawful. It's his actions at interfering with federal law enforcement that got him the attention that he got. And eventually, he ended up being shot because he resisted and officers knew he was armed and he did not comply. They have messed up so badly with their narrative messaging on this. And this focus on the gun and the 2 magazines, there's nothing nefarious about that. I don't know why they're carrying this talking point. And it's costing them. It's costing them big time. It's costing them support, which is what they need. Now, I shouldn't say that costing them support. It probably is. It's not. I'm not withdrawing my support from them, but it's just not good. Bill Malugan reported that since yesterday's deadly shooting in Minnesota, I've talked to more than half a dozen federal sources involved in immigration enforcement, including several in senior positions, who all tell me they have grown increasingly uneasy and frustrated with some of the claims and narratives DHS pushed in the aftermath of the shooting. I told you guys in my video a couple days ago or several days ago that the admin is screwing up and they keep playing unwinnable games. They keep on playing unwinnable games, and I know not everybody agrees with me, and they didn't like what I had to say. The comments tell me so. That's fine. Keep telling me so. I know what the fuck I'm talking about, and this is evidence that I knew what the fuck I was talking about. Because it's exactly the fucking thing I was talking about. The admin is in the right on immigration enforcement. The law is on the admin side. The judicial warrants and the administration warrants are on the admin side. The voters who put Trump into office to do this exact thing are on the admin side. Do the fucking work. I'm going to calm down. Sorry. I'm hot. Sometimes I really hate that I see this kind of thing happening and it's difficult for me to communicate exactly what I'm seeing and what I'm perceiving. But I perceived this. I perceived this ugly, ugly mess coming, and others did too. And all we want is this admin to quit playing the stupid games. And we just, over the weekend, a terrible thing happened. And it's not those Border Patrol agents' fault. They are not criminally liable for what went down with Alex Pretti. Several people in this admin, they're so focused on playing this finite, stupid game in the net with narrative warfare. And they're losing the narrative war with their stupid statements. All they had to say was, we stand by our law enforcement officers. There will be an investigation, and when all the facts come out, we'll go from there. But that wasn't enough for them. They decided to play the game, and they got burned bad. And now there's extreme frustration within the DHS over statements that have been put out claiming that Alex Pretti was intending to conduct a massacre of federal agents. I looked for that clip and I didn't find it. Or wanted to carry out maximum damage, even after numerous videos appeared to show those claims were inaccurate. While they say it was a terrible decision to show up with a gun and inject himself into a law enforcement operation, no, it was a terrible decision to inject himself into a law enforcement operation. Armed or unarmed. There's no indication Pretti was there to murder law enforcement. And videos show he never drew his holstered firearm. These sources say this messaging from DHS officials has been catastrophic from a PR and morale perspective, and it is eroding trust and credibility. Yep. Remember my video the other day? I was talking about how worried I was. This is one. Some of these sources have described DHS response to the shooting as a, quote, case study on how not to do crisis PR. One said they are fed up and that they wish they could retire. Another said DHS is making the situation worse. And another added DHS is wrong and we are losing this war. We are losing the base and the narrative. They lost the narrative because they played small game narrative warfare BS, mostly online, mostly in viral clips, instead of simply just saying, we back our law enforcement. We back our law enforcement. There'll be an investigation. We're going to wait till all the facts come out. We ask that people stop interfering with our law enforcement. That's all they had to say. That's all they had to fucking say. These sources all believe this is going to end up being what they call a bad shoot, a shitty situation that happened in seconds where agents likely heard gun, disarmed the firearm, may have had an accidental discharge that spooked the agents. And the agent shot. The agents do not have the luxury of multiple slow motion angles and had to make split-second decisions. All of the sources support, all of these sources talking to Bill Malugin at Fox News support the mass deportation agenda, but have serious hesitation about the way it is being carried out and the messaging that comes with it. Many of the sources have expressed frustration that ICE is routinely blamed for actions of Border Patrol, a completely separate agency. Speaking of that, Greg Bovino lost his job. Or did he? We don't really know. What matters is that the news went out that he lost his job and that he's been removed from being the commander at large. And how did the leftist press entertain it? How did Ryan Goodlaw and The Atlantic, how did they perceive that? First domino. Is that true? I don't know. Is that reality? Well, it's perception, isn't it? The left, they perceive it as the first domino. Those groups that that the Green Beret was talking about. Where did my post go with the Green Beret? There he is. How did the counterinsurgency, how do they perceive Bovino losing his job? You bet your ass they perceive it as the first domino. It's a win. That's how they perceive it. Now, Tricia McLaughlin, spokesperson for DHS, came in and said, no, Greg Bovino has not been relieved of his duties. This isn't true. But Nick Sorter reported that he's no longer commander at large. The position has been eliminated. I don't know, guys. I don't know what's true. I don't know which is true. I know that it's being reported that that's what's happening. Meanwhile, threats are increasing against ICE and Border Patrol. It's not the comments the administration made in the first 24 hours of this event aren't helping. Trump says that he's sending Tom Homan in. I like Tom Homan a lot. As I talked about in a different video, we have this thing where we seem to think we need a person to go there, like we need some top individual to go there in person, but it just takes up more resources. So I don't know that that's actually a great thing for him to go be boots on the ground. If that's what the people there who are boots on the ground want, sure. But whatever. Tom Homan's coming. I'm not going to complain about it unless it draws resources. Secretary Noem says, she's really happy that Tom is going to be there and they've worked together and he's a major asset to our team. But there's other reporting that Homan and Kristi Noem don't get along and have hardly spoken to each other since the start of the admin. Fracture. Trump said he had very good talks with Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, and Governor Walz, and he asked them for their cooperation on getting the criminals. And he said, look, I just want the criminals. And this is a big thing that's happening that's leading to ICE and Border Patrol doing the operations they're doing, is because state and police in Minnesota have been told not to cooperate with federal law enforcement, not to assist. But Trump says Tim Walz called him and they seem to be on a similar wavelength, he said, and that lots of progress has been made or is being made. And Tom Homan's going to be meeting with Mayor Frey today. I will say that it looks like ICE isn't slowing down. There were more arrests last night. About a dozen protesters were arrested last night. So it's good that arrests are continuing. Perhaps, and this looks like is this local PD? This doesn't look like, I'm looking for identification, and I think these are local. Yeah. Yeah. This is police. This is Minneapolis police. Good. Yeah, local Minneapolis police arrested violent rioters last night. Glad to see state and local government cooperation. It's a start. So perhaps what Trump said about talking to Mayor Frey and Governor Walz, this is going to have a big impact. They need local law enforcement to deal with the protesters so that federal law enforcement can conduct their operations. This is good news. So I'm going to end this whole video with this good news. I'm trying to think of a way to wrap it up. This whole thing reminds me of the summer 2020 riots and how those things just lit off. how they just lit off, and it took advantage of the unique situation from COVID and the lockdowns and all of that. And we probably won't see something like that again, but boy, these types of groups would love to see it. And we should. I'm not one of these guys who thinks that we're on the verge of a civil war. I actually don't like that kind of talk. I don't like that kind of civil war talk. And I think that I think a lot of accounts who bring it up are coming from a bad place. I really do. It's almost like they're inviting it, like they want it, or at least they want it to be talked about, maybe because it's good for their grift. But yeah, I don't see that. What I do see is a counterinsurgency, and the counterinsurgency is against federal law enforcement conducting federal law enforcement operations, which we're getting because federal law enforcement is conducting law enforcement operations nationwide. And that's a very, very good thing. And these groups are they're not highly sophisticated from the top all the way down, but they are highly sophisticated in certain ways that make them very effective. And once you see it, it's difficult to not see it. It comes across in every one of these videos and as you pick apart these incidents. And that means there's some sort of structure. And like I said earlier, I think that this admin, they're perfectly capable of it. They're 100% capable of dealing with this problem and snuffing it out. I don't want anybody fired. I don't want Noam or Cash or any of them fired. I want Trump to keep on doing what he has been doing, which is giving them his full support. And I want Cash and AG Bondi to keep doing what they have been doing, which is letting good cops be good cops. If they'll just do that, and if they'll quit playing these finite games in the narrative war, but instead play the infinite game of we're going to do the work we were voted in to do, let the results speak for themselves. If the American people don't appreciate it after 4 years, they can vote us out. Simple as that. Just straight ahead, do what we voted you into office to do. And keep supporting law enforcement to engage in what they're doing. Keep supporting when your U.S. Attorney's Office says we can't get an indictment or we can't win a case, don't force them to bring an indictment they can't win. Just let them do the work. And if you do that, you can dismantle these counterinsurgency networks. So, all right, I'm interested in you guys' thoughts. Sorry I got a little bit heated in that, but I am quite pissed off about it, as you can tell. And I'm sure there's some things about this that you are quite ticked off about. And there's also some things you support or whatever. I would like to hear your comments. I hope this video brought some value to you in breaking apart the situation, because it's so much more. There's so much more going on here. You know, this one incident, Renee Good, the protesters at the church with Don Lemon, this Alex Pretti shooting, these are all these single incidents, but they're all ignition points in this greater counterinsurgency that's playing out in the state of Minnesota. And it could blow up and become much greater if good cops aren't allowed to be good cops. That's what we need to have happen. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would really appreciate it. And y'all have a good one. Stay human. Stay human. Protect your fellow humans. Support your fellow humans. And you'll see me in the next video.